Let's talk about blood sugar imbalance.
Welcome to the Inspire Health Podcast. Your life is about to get a whole lot better. Have you ever felt like you tried everything and yet still couldn't find the answers or the solutions that you were seeking? Whether you're dealing with chronic illness, physical or emotional pain, I want you to know that your body is the most sophisticated machine on planet Earth. Your body holds unfathomable wisdom. Trust in it and learn from it. Know that there are answers and there are solutions to your specific health challenges, and we will be uncovering all of them here on the Inspire Health Podcast. I'm so excited to be a part of your healing journey. Your transformation starts now.
Now there's 4 big factors when we talk about stress. So number 1 is blood sugar imbalances. So the things that play into this would be refined carbohydrates. So when I'm talking about refined carbohydrates, that's like white flours, right? For the most part, it's really processed grains for the most part. So processed grains, just all of the stuff that buffers some of the blood sugar and buffers the release of sugar into your blood has been taken out. So the fiber has been taken out, a lot of the nutrients have been taken out. So they tend to spike blood sugar very quickly. And in some literature, you'll see that certain grains can spike blood sugar just as fast, if not faster, than plain white sugar can. So you could have a piece of white bread and it'll often spike blood sugar even faster than white sugar will itself. So it's pretty amazing at the effects that refined carbohydrates have. And that's one of the biggest reasons for this huge problem with diabetes, is that there's way too many refined carbohydrates. Now, another thing that a lot of people don't think about is excess protein. Now, protein can be a double-edged sword. Too much of it will cause blood sugar problems because protein just gets broken down into sugar. But not enough of it also creates problems because we need a certain amount of protein to stabilize our blood sugar, because it tends to take a little bit longer time to break protein down into sugar than it does carbohydrates. So proteins are generally a fuel that we use to buffer blood sugar for us when we're needing to slow down the release. But too much becomes a problem and is also related to diabetes. Any cortisol spikes. So cortisol spikes would be when we get in fight or flight mode. So when we're getting worried, or we're pensive, or we've got anxiety or something along these lines that's spiking our cortisol levels, that creates blood sugar imbalances. Because blood sugar, when cortisol goes up, blood sugar spikes, but then not too long blood sugar, then that causes a big insulin surge, and insulin pulls blood sugar right back down again. And this is the problem, that a lot of people end up on this roller coaster ride with blood sugar all day long. And it can create so many troubles with your mood and how you can regulate stress, because you're just in this up and down mode all day long. Another marker that we have to look at is obesity. Obesity is one of the biggest reasons for type 2 diabetes. It's really essential to manage weight. And now that can be a mix of things, because a lot of times people that are getting too heavy also are having troubles managing their blood sugar. But most of that comes back down to diet stuff. Now, the best measurement you can do is looking at a waist to hip ratio. And I'm not going to go into all of that in this lecture, but go back to the Building Resilience lecture, and I talk about some of the main markers, and there's a free download in the show notes for that episode as well. And it's got all of those different sheets that you can use to track your symptoms, and these markers are determinants of health that I talk about. But getting your hip to weight ratio, your hip to waist ratio optimized is an excellent marker for longevity. It's an excellent marker for decreasing risk of diabetes. Lack of fiber is another problem, and this ties in a little bit with the refined carbohydrates, because we get certain fiber from carbohydrates that are whole food carbohydrates, but they are stripped out when we have refined carbs. So if you're going to have carbohydrates, try and move more towards whole food carbohydrates. And fiber is also in our fruits and vegetables. So fruits and vegetables can both be great. Vegetables are often missing in most people's diet. The vast majority of it's hard to get the amount of vegetables that we should be intaking. So I always suggest try and throw them in wherever you can. Even if you do things like smoothies once in a while, throw in some different greens and whatnot. Try and get your veggies in different ways as much as you can. But fiber is a great buffer for blood sugar. It slows the release. Generally, the things that really slow the release for blood sugar would be adding fibers in, adding some protein, but not too much, and adding healthy fats. Those 3 things are your biggest factors that will slow the release of sugar. Another problem is just too much sugar. Everything just keeps getting more and more sugar added to it. If you've ever done a challenge where you've taken sugar out for a week or two, and then you go back to eating some of the things that you used to have that were high in sugar, you're astounded at how sweet they really are. We basically get desensitized to sugar as we go along. And especially in North America, I've been to other countries where I have something that has sugar and it's significantly less sweet than what I'm used to having out here if I have it. So I think North America in general keeps upping the ante with how much sugar they're putting in things. So absolutely try and take particularly refined white sugars and refined brown sugars out. If you're going to use sweeteners, your better sweeteners are to move towards things like a little bit of honey or a little bit of coconut sugar. And then some of your alternative sugars that are still good would be things like some stevia or a little bit of monk fruit sweetener or even xylitol. Those things can be good alternatives that won't affect your blood sugar very much. Improper timing of food. Some people are very sensitive to when they need to eat. Some people need it right away when they wake up in the morning, or else they cannot get feeling okay. And if people wait too long, their blood sugar will crash. And often when people are initially having troubles with managing their blood sugar, they are very sensitive to the timing of their meals. When people begin to become very fat adapted, meaning that their body can access fat for fuel more efficiently, you can usually go long periods of time without eating. This is where you can fast for chunks of time and you don't really feel bad at all. You actually feel really good in a fasted state. But initially, a lot of times people can't do that, and they may need to eat very frequently first just to try and keep their blood sugar in a good zone. And as they're changing their diet so that it's not having spikes and crashes so quickly, then they build up where they can start to then stretch the timing of their meals farther apart. And then they're usually fine with 2 or 3 meals a day without having to have snacks throughout the day or grazing throughout the day. Now, ultimately, neither one is necessarily all good or all bad. What I've learned over the years is that everything is very individual, and some people just do very well on a 2 meals a day with an intermittent fast. Other people do really well grazing. So the key with all of it is, regardless of what I tell you, I'm going to give you my experience on things, but you need to ultimately try it and see what works for you and be able and willing to modify things if they're not working and you're not getting the results you want. Another big factor for blood sugar imbalance is exercise, and particularly lack of exercise. Exercise is a great modulator for blood sugar. Hormonally, it affects a lot of things that help to manage blood sugar. It's an essential piece of the overall picture, and it doesn't have to be incredibly hard exercises. A lot of it's just incorporating more movement, and I'm going to talk pretty soon about what that actually means and what you can do to start to get back on track. So some of the big solutions for blood sugar, and again, like I said, there's lots of ways to do this. I've seen people manage their blood sugar eating a paleo kind of a diet. I've seen people manage their blood sugar very well doing a ketogenic diet. I've seen people do a more of a Pritikin type of a diet, or a more of a whole food kind of a diet that incorporates higher amounts of complex carbohydrates. They can all work, but they don't all work for every single person. So this is where all these diet battles come back and forth, is it takes away the individuality. Some people just do better on some diets than other ones, but I've seen people lower their cholesterol on all of those different diets. Ones that are told that they're going to increase their cholesterol, lower it. So you've seen it enough. I've seen it enough times where you just have to try some different things. So the one that I find works well initially for a lot of people, and you might have to balance it out a little bit for you, but I find if people have blood sugar issues, what I always want people to try and do initially is start to add in a little bit more higher healthy fats. So add in a little bit more olives, a little bit more very clean olive oil that's raw, meaning you don't cook with it, adding in a little bit more avocado, maybe some coconut cream or coconut oil, and maybe a little bit of cocoa butter. If you eat eggs and you're not sensitive to them, egg yolks can be very good as well. But those are some of the classic higher fats that tend to be very beneficial for the body. I would start to move my carbohydrates just lower. I would get rid of refined carbohydrates completely, and I would start to move and take my carbohydrates now more from vegetables. So if you can, you try and move more towards incorporating maybe a little bit more of the lower glycemic index vegetables, like maybe sweet potato and yam, as opposed to having just white potato for a little bit. And again, that shouldn't be very much, but you want to keep those down, but you still want to have some carbohydrates in because you need them most of the time. But you don't need lots of them if you're trying to balance out your blood sugar. And then the goal is ultimately, if you're testing it and getting it checked, you're looking to see if it's working, and then you start to add more and more stuff back in to figure out what do you need to keep you in a good zone. A strategy that I really like to incorporate is called intermittent fasting. If you've listened to me long enough, you've heard me talk about this. I found this was a really great one for me and for many patients. Now again, not everybody, and if you are under high stress, intermittent fasting can be challenging on your adrenals. So you have to see ultimately if it's working or not. But from a blood sugar standpoint, intermittent fasting can be a very great strategy to get your body to become more fat adapted, meaning you're training your body to use fat for fuel as opposed to carbohydrates for fuel. So I think the easiest way is doing a 6 to 8 hour fast with is basically doing a 6 to 8 hour fast, and then, I think the best way to incorporate intermittent fasting is to basically have about a 6 to 8 hour window with the rest of the time fasting. So you would be fasting for 16 to 18 hours, and you would be eating for 6 to 8 hours. Most people can do that. That usually means skipping breakfast in the morning and then just having more of an earlier lunch and then an earlier dinner. And if you can do that and you can start to move towards that, even if you try it once a week and then try it twice a week and just see what happens. But there's a lot of information, a lot of research showing the benefits of that with blood sugar balancing. Increasing fiber. I think the easiest way is trying to bulk up more of your vegetables. That's probably the best way to try and get your fiber in. And outside of that, because we're not usually doing a lot of grains, then you could even do a bit of a fiber supplement if you wanted to, just to bulk up a little extra fiber. You can incorporate prebiotic fibers like inulin, or you can do a bit of a bulk fiber that is got a little bit more things like guar gum and psyllium husk and stuff like that. And just see how it feels. Fiber sometimes can really help with things like bowel movements, but sometimes too much fiber can cause a bit of constipation. So again, you have to work with your practitioner to know what the right blend is with all these things. I'm not giving you specific dosages on everything because that's something you need to figure out, and you need to work with someone because everybody's case is individual. And the other part around blood sugar management is exercise. And I think the easiest way to start it, and this is a equation that I think works really well, and I talked about this in exercise with fat loss in another podcast I did back earlier on that you'll see on the website. But the ratio is, you want to calculate this out, and it's 180 minus your age is your max aerobic heart rate. So 180 minus your age. So if I were 40 years old, I'm actually 47, but if I was 40 years old, then it would be 180 minus 40. So my max aerobic heart rate would be 140. I would not want to go above 140. And often I would even suggest minus it again by another 5 beats just to be on the safe side. This was a equation that was established by an exercise physiologist named Phil Maffetone, and he broke this down as being your max aerobic heart rate. So when you get into this zone, your primary fuel that your body is going to use is fat. So it's a great way to get your body to start to get used to burning fat for fuel, and you're training it to get into that zone. Now the key is that often if people are really out of balance, it can take about 2 months of doing this on a regular basis. So you might go out for a 45-minute walk. Most of the time it's a walk. You're usually actually exercising at a much lower intensity than you think you're going to. And you would go for that, you would track your heart rate, and you'd be looking to make sure that you don't go above your 180 minus your age, minus probably even another 5 beats. Even if it doesn't feel like you're working out very hard, don't worry about it. Just walk. Stay at that zone. If you start to speed it up a little bit and your heart rate's starting to go up a beat and another beat and another beat, and you're getting close to your max heart rate, slow back down. Do not go above that max aerobic heart rate. And if you can do that for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour daily, because it's not hard exercise, it really is just going and moving your body for a period of time.